what's up, dudes? Real quick, this channel is supported by ToneJunkieStore.com. Check us out for all your modeling, capture, and IR needs. We have a huge special during the month of August. All everything packs are $60, including the NAM A2 everything pack. So if you're on one of those units that just adopted NAM A2, come check out ToneJunkieStore.com. Back to the video. Hey, what's up, dudes? HW here. Today I want to talk about modeling and modelers versus capture tech, the pros and the cons of both, the weak spots, the strengths of both, and maybe dispel a couple rumors or falsehoods that I see going around the internet that I don't really agree with, and give you some of my perspective. So who am I? I've been making captures. I've been doing Tone Junkie for, I don't know, 7-8 years now. In that time, I've owned 300 or 400 amplifiers. I've owned all the microphones you've ever heard of and tried them out. And that's really my thing. When I first started getting into guitar, I don't know, 25 years ago or something, there was a lot of stuff I would just see out there on the internet, and I just wanted to try it, you know? One time I remember thinking to myself, man, I wish I could have all of the Fenders from the mid-60s so I could try them all out at once and really hear the differences. And now I do. And I'll tell you, after having owned them all, you don't need them all. Probably just one or two is all you need. There's a lot of overlap, but there are some differences and stuff. Same thing with old Marshalls and stuff. I just love trying guitar gear. You know what I mean? I really am a tone junkie. Okay, so contrary to what you might think, I am actually a really big fan of modeling. And I think modeling can sound really good and, I mean, obviously indistinguishable from a real amp or from a capture of a real amp or something like that. The sound you heard at the beginning there was a really good model. And it's important to remember that all this stuff is really just to get us the desired tone and the desired feel that we want to like create music and be expressive on the guitar. So that was like one of my favorite tones I've ever gotten with this guitar. I just felt like it really sang and it just felt so fun to play and it was super inspiring. And all that was a Line 6 Stadium on the Deluxe model. Now that is a really good example of how the past generation, the Helix, I think suffered from something where some of the models were really good. Some of them I really didn't think were that convincing. And then you fast forward to these Agora amp models, all of them have been really good that I've played. That Deluxe is one of my favorites. This is coming from a guy who has captured multiple Deluxes. I've owned multiple vintage Deluxes and modern production, boutique hand-to-hand point wire Deluxes, Jensen. I've tried them with Jensens, JBLs, everything. That is an amazing model of a Deluxe. All I did is put one of my IRs with it so that I could get the sound of a couple different speakers that I'm familiar with my real Deluxes. And it is there. So, I mean, if you're a guy who just wants the Deluxe sound, it's like you can look at a modeling amp like the Stadium and just go, hey, that's going to cover me. I know it. And I get everything else almost for free at that point because it's going to cost you about as much. It's going to cost you probably more than Deluxe. But you get what I'm saying. If that's really the sound that's your sound, you get that plus access to everything else. And it's really convincing. And I don't feel like there's a lot of compromise in the actual sound that gets out to people. And that's something to really note. Modeling has gotten so good that it is just as good as anything else out there. Now, what's better, that Deluxe or my Deluxe captured? Well, that is a question. I would put that Deluxe up against anything that I've ever released. That Deluxe with a free Tone Junkie IR is as good as anything I've ever released for NAM, Tonex, or anything. That kind of goes against you know, maybe what you'd think I would want to say to like drive more sales or something, but it's the honest truth. Oh, but HW, you're saying, but you need my IR. I'm just saying my IR because then it's a very even comparison. We're comparing like the same speaker to the same speaker and the same microphone placement to the same microphone placement. And it just performs. So I think that models can be, if you're familiar with the analog world and you know how a Deluxe or a Vox or a Marshall works, when you jump into modeling, you're going to immediately be hit with the feeling, the simulation that you have the analog gear. And that's what I think modeling is really good for. It models the analog world really well. Whereas with captures, you're being asked to do something a little bit different. And that thing is, you're almost being asked to step out of the guitar player's shoes and be more of like a mixing engineer. Like you're almost being asked to take in a recorded guitar setup and sound, and now it's up to you to do something about it. I obviously am partial to capture tech, and there's this one falsehood out there that I hear all the time that I wish we could just root it out of the internet, and that's this. It's that models can be EQ'd or changed, but captures, you can't edit them, you can't change them, you can't manipulate them or anything like that. I can't tell you how much I disagree with this, and I'll tell you why. From a practical perspective, obviously your guitar EQ on your guitar amp, your amp's EQ, is a useful tool. It's a useful tool, and you set it up to sort of get your tone or an acceptable tone. But when you go to record that tone, you are using a bunch of outboard gear. You might be using some sort of an EQ or a preamp with that microphone. The microphone is an EQ. All of those things come into the sound. And so the sound engineer, you'll notice if you've ever gone and recorded anything, the sound engineer is very unlikely to ever make a comment to you like, hey, can you shelve 120K down? Hey, can you low pass it and take out a little of the presence there? They're not likely to do that. They just might say, hey, can you give me a little more lows, a little more this and that? Or they might even go in and adjust a microphone. And the reason for that is when you're miking up a guitar amp, like I would here, I have a mic room or an amp room back here. It's a room in a room that I built. When you're back there and you want a little more heft and low end out of a small amp, you would move the microphone forward. And that has a very different effect than what your amp's EQ would do. And once you start using outboard effects and you start using either a graphic EQ or a studio style EQ, you will start to notice that your amplifier has a very limited EQ range, almost all of them. Now, I'm not talking about some of the more modern stuff like a Mesa Boogie Active, stack, but all of these Fenders behind me have some of the most rudimentary EQs. If you don't know this, the bass and the treble in Fenders are just high and low pass filters that have a value based on the capacitors inside. So that's why the tone stacks change. The mids are just more signal. That might seem counterintuitive, but the design there is that if you have the high and low and it's high and low passing, it's literally just shaving off high end, and it starts up here and just goes lower and lower until it takes away all your high end. It sounds very muffled. And your low end too starts down here and just starts taking out all sorts of low end. The middle is just it's just really attenuating the overall signal down. And the reason being, if you've shelved and then you increase the middle, those shelves are still in effect. You're really only going to get the unaffected mid-range frequencies, thus making a de facto mid control. The other way, of course, to just get more mids on a Fender would be to just turn the bass and treble down more and then boost the volume. That's actually effectively the same thing. And that's why you notice on a lot of old amplifiers, especially like a Plexi, the more you increase those EQs, the louder the amp actually gets. Why is that? Well, because the loudest the amp is everything on 10, and then the way that almost all tube amplifiers are designed, all you're doing is taking away, you're shaving down frequencies. That's what your amp EQ does. And it gives you very broad stroke tools to do it. You cannot do a lot of the things that you can do with just a very simple studio style EQ. So in your modeler, this is kind of the point of what I'm saying. In your modeler, or as an outboard gear, I would have a simple studio EQ that gives me the opportunity to shelve to shelve or do a high and low pass on each side. And then I can actually have boosts or cuts where I want them. So for example, if I wanted to clean up my guitars in the mix, as an engineer or as a person making guitar tones, I might, you know, I might high pass and take out all of the stuff below 100. Because that would take out a lot of the woofy lows. I might even go higher than that, 150, just to make the guitars real clear. If I have my high end is too present and crisp and stuff, I might darken it up a little bit. I might boost around 500 if I want to be very vocal. I might boost at 350 if I really want something to come out in the mix and jump up. If I want a more Marshall-y kind of chime or something, or forwardness in the mid-range that's not tube screamery, but maybe more Klon-esque, I might boost 1600 or 1200. I might carve out a dip at 35 or 38, hundred there to get rid of harshness, digital harshness. I may try to cut between 2 and 3.5K to leave some room for the vocals and really force the guitar to inhabit those lower mid-range frequencies. These are all things that are not advanced. They're not advanced. They are, I don't know, semester 1, year 1 at a mixing and engineer college or something, how to like EQ or make space for instruments. It's one of these things that you can get really good at, but it's not like a big secret or something you can't learn online or something like that. And so my point is, if you really want to get into what it takes to turn an amp sound into something that's recorded and presented in a mix or on a record, there's really no way around it other than using these post-microphone tools. And that's where I think modeling actually puts a lot of power into the guitar player's hands, whereas a simple amp EQ doesn't. So, but also I'd like to point out that the EQs that are on an amplifier, those little EQ stacks that are, in maybe the Tonex or the Quad Cortex or Proxy or Kemper, if you're not using a liquid profile in Kemper, those tone stacks are still very effective and they can sound very good. You just have to think of those EQs in your board there as like, I'm an engineer now, and these are my channel strip EQs. This is the EQ I have to do something with. And so that's the really simple channel strip that I have on my microphone pre. And when you treat it like that, you quickly realize you can get whatever you want out of the guitar. I know for guitar players, it might be tough to, at first glance, understand that. You might think, how could I possibly dial in my deluxe reverb? But in my experience, a deluxe reverb being at, 4 and 6 on the bass and treble, or being at 6 and 7, is actually far less different than if I switch microphones, if I put a dynamic all the way up there, if I have a lot of air from a 121 way back here and it's picking up a lot of the room, if I have some sort of a boost or something. I mean, I've gone in places and played live and I instantly plug in my microphone or my model or whatever, and I can hear that there's this really massive EQ going on, a lot of lows being cut and all this stuff. And so I might say to the sound guy, hey, is there EQ on the channel? Meaning I can hear a much more powerful EQ than I can really get on my deluxe reverb by taking out some bass. And I think that's mostly true of most guitar amplifiers. We as guitar players think they're very powerful. The tone stacks are very powerful. They are not actually that powerful on vintage designs. They're really not. Now, of course, you can take the cut on a Vox, make it super dark, and you've messed up your tone completely. But I would much rather, if you told me I could only have one, just as a guy who has made a lot of videos on how to use it, I would much rather take a studio EQ with a high and low shelf and 2 points I can accent or dip, and you let me dial in my sound. I will make it sound great. A lot easier than if you don't give me that, right? You don't need to go buy another pack. You don't need to go find a different amp model. You don't need a different pickup, a different guitar. You just need to figure out, why do I like this thing? What's the difference between this and this? Oh, this has a lot more upper mids between 1200 and 2K. And if I boost that, I get out what I want. That is really the unlock. And when you learn what that little EQ block in your modeler can do after the amp or in front of the amp, you start getting into, you can tailor a boost for your guitar. You can tailor your guitar to sound just like you want it. Modeling, I think, is really great all the time. But at the end of the day, you're going to need to know how to use more advanced tools if your goal is to get the sound that you have to be right, to be what you want, and get it to the end listener. And those tools, if you understand those tools, can fix any problem that exists with capture tech. So that's kind of the summary of my opinion is, if you're a person like modeling versus capture tech, they're both great. They're both awesome. They both can work really well. I think capture tech has some advantages. I think modeling has some advantages in terms of you can buy something and just get everything you need. You don't have to keep chasing anything. Capture tech gives you something pre-dialed in, already done. Maybe you like that person. Maybe you get a huge bundle, and a lot of times capture tech is designed for a very specific purpose. Maybe this person's more worshipy, this person's more rock, this person does this thing really well. But ultimately, you have to be the one who takes control and uses the tools that are in front of you to really get what you're after and just level up yourself. There's a ton of resources on my channel if you want to learn more about this stuff. I don't have any paid courses or anything like that. Maybe one day I'll do a course or something, but I just put stuff on YouTube for free. I've been HW.